So picking up from our last painting, we're gonna do this still life here as a monochromatic painting with our homemade black that we made by mixing our French ultramarine, rose madder lake, and Sennelier yellow deep. Again, an alternative yellow is cadmium. It's a good warm yellow. And we're gonna start with a wash, and I have my paper or my watercolor board on about a 30-degree angle. That way gravity will help pull down the paint. And we'll begin with the background, just painting around our subject, and that is called negative painting. So I've got my big brush here so it'll carry a lot of paint and water, and I'm going to mix a nice dark homemade black. I find it's easiest to start with purple with the blue and the rose and then add in the yellow, and that will gray it for you. So we need a really big batch of this because we're using it for the whole painting. But don't worry if you run out, you just have to make some more. So you don't want too much water on your brush. These carry huge amounts of water. So you can sort of squeegee it out like a mop, and I always have a lot of paper towels close by to wipe off the excess water with. That takes a little bit of getting used to, but you'll get the feel for it eventually. So this is my darkest value in the background. So this is my level 5. And here I use my tape under the board to give it the angle. And I'm going to pull down a little bit. I was cut out of the frame a little bit. Sorry about that. So here I'm just pulling down this dark value for about the top third of the painting. So I'm using the point of the brush to carve around the shape. And after that first third, I'm going to start adding more water to lighten it a bit so that I have a transition, and this will be a graded wash. So I have a little bit of blossoms forming. That's because that top part was starting to dry a little bit already, and that's okay. I'm just going to glaze over this again one more time later just to show you how to do a glaze. And it's a good way to fix those sorts of mistakes. So the whole middle part of the painting I'm having at about a level 2, and then below that will be about a level 3. Now, so I want that dark background to come down a little bit more. I'm going to shrink the size of my table. And first you have to dry completely before you try glazing over something. If you do it while the other layer is still wet, you'll end up taking off paint rather than adding it on. So make sure you go blow dry it or just wait for it to dry all the way. And I'm adding my dark a couple inches lower, and I get the paint and water out of my brush and run it along that bottom edge just to soften it sort of smooth it out so I don't have a hard line there. I want all of these transitions to be soft and smooth. So I dry it all the way again, and then we'll start painting in the subject. And you can see here I've switched now to this smaller detail brush for doing the subject here, make it a little easier to handle. And I put in this first dark line on the bottom of the spout, but I keep that edge clear on the bottom. That's a highlight there. So I've got the one dark edge and a shadow, and then with just water I pull that rest of the shape up. So now I'm going to do the base of the jug, and I'm starting with just water on that side. I want to get one soft edge, so I'm putting that really dark into the water so that the edge softens when the paint bleeds into it. Now we want a lot of good contrast, and that is when you have your whitest white to your darkest dark, and that is how we make it look like it's got a shape or a sense of form, like it's 3D. And I'm just going to have this side kind of fade off in the shadow, darkest where it sticks out the closest towards you. We are working with a directional light source that is coming from the left hand to the right hand side of the frame. So the white part is the part that's getting blasted out by the light. And then we've got some nice heavy contrast in our shadows. Now with my darkest dark, I'm going to start on that handle, and the base and the top both have that really dark, and then with just some water, I will pull the paint in a little bit and soften it until it runs out. I'm also going to use a wet brush to come around and just sort of wiggle along the edges of the shape so that I fix up that shape and get some nice clean edges on there. Now I'll pull in a medium tone for the top and add a couple dark touches to it. And then a dark under the bottom. And one more shadow that is created by this little pear that's lying down in front of it. So I'm going to start my pear off the same way I did the jug, with just some water. My water's a little dirty. I didn't clean my brush that well, but that's okay. I will just come back and soften this edge now. And then I'm going to put the dark part, because it's always the darkest on that top edge, where the light starts to bend around the object. And then I'll just kind of soften it and float the paint out gently with some water, and you can push the pigment around and shape it a little bit as you go. And then I'll get that darkest dark in there for where the stem's sticking out. So we're painting the shadow that's around that little groove where the stem goes into, and the stem sticks out, so that's got the nice highlight on it. And then lastly, we'll do the shadows that these objects are casting. So go ahead and apply this, and then on your own, try to set up a little still life next to a window or a lamp where you are giving a strong directional light source, so it's not looking straight into the light, it's lit on the side like this with some good shadows. And find some simple shapes and see if you can create your own little value study. And don't forget to have all the 5 levels of value and make some good contrast.